Welcome to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. And now, here's your host, Wade T. Lightheart.
What if you could double your energy naturally without caffeine or stimulants in just 3 short months? It's not only possible, you can transform every aspect of your health if you follow the 12-week blueprint we've created for you in the Awesome Health System. The Awesome Health System is a free course where you receive a daily video lesson spanning the most cutting-edge secrets for air, water, exercise, sunshine, optimizers, mindset, and education. It's something most companies would charge hundreds of dollars for, yet you get it for free when you go to bioptimizers.com. To access your course, register to download the PDF report called 3 Phases of Bioptimization, which gets you access to the report and daily access to the first lesson in the 12-week, 84-day Awesome Health course.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Wade T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers with another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. And today we have got something really important to talk about. It's non-toxic personal care. And we're talking about sunscreen. We're talking about the use of silver and UDI and food grade only ingredients, particularly things that have no endocrine disruptors. You know, it's for some people, they like to be out in the sun. I love being out in the sun. I'm in Venice Beach, California. And the thing is if you're putting stuff on your skin and you can't pronounce or you don't know what it is, it's probably not that good for it. In other words, the old school saying is, if you can't eat it, don't put it on your skin. So fortunately today, we have an expert in providing healthy sunblock for you and a variety of other things. In fact, our guest today is Guerry Grune, and he is a chemical, mechanical, and material science engineer, a chemist possessing expertise related to chemical, mechanical, electrical, and medical products. Think about that for a second. That's a mouthful. And what's interesting, he's also a surfer. Spends a lot of time, surfing the world, Hawaii, Australia, Costa Rica, Japan. I've gone surfing. Let me tell you, that's man's work. You get out there, or really serious women's work. I shouldn't be gender dominant, but man, I got the crap beat out of me, and it's real easy to burn to a crisp out there in the salt water, especially for a light guy myself. But he got into this whole industry because his longtime surfing partner, at only 22, found melanoma. And the bottom lines is, if you look at most sunscreens, most of them don't cut it. And in fact, in 2001, the Institute of Toxicology in Zurich, Switzerland, published research. And this is what they said, that, look at all these things: methoxycinnamate, oxybenzone, and benzophenone agents are commonly found in commercial sunscreens and were in fact endocrine disruptors, chemicals that interfere with the body's delicate hormonal balance. In short, the sunscreen that Gary's friend was using and virtually everybody else are unsafe. So Guerry has developed a company that deals with these issues and provides a lot of services for people worried about their skin and a lot of other things. So Guerry, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Wade. I appreciate that.
Well, we were on the call beforehand, and we could go down so many different rabbit holes because of your expertise. But let's just give maybe a little bit expand on what we talked about. It's you love to surf. You're out in the sun a lot. You're an active guy, along with being like a genius in multiple fields. What was it like when you discovered that the sunscreen that people are using actually sucks and is counter to health?
That's a great question. I was pretty shocked, I guess, not completely shocked. It happened in 2001. That article that you mentioned from Margaret Schlumpf. She was a toxicologist in Zurich, Switzerland. And I'm a lifetime member of the American Chemical Society, and it was a front page article on endocrine disruptors, and ENDOCRIN, endocrine disruptors. And those are female mimicking hormones. And I was like, what the heck is going on here? So read the article, contacted her directly, which in those days, internet was in its infancy. Email was still, she sent me her full transcript by mail from Zurich. And she lathered the back of female rats with these quote unquote endocrine disruptors to find out what they were doing. And what happened was the female rat's uterus grew abnormally large. And that's how she determined they were female mimicking hormones. The biggest female mimicking hormone on the planet is the pill. It's in the air, it's in the water, and it's a threat to not only males, but females on the planet as well, men and women, because it's disrupting your hormonal imbalance, right?
Great video on that called "The Disappearing Male" and the rise.
Exactly.
Compounds, and it's changing the birth rates, and the average male today in their 30s is the testosterone level of a man in their 70s in the 1970s.
Yeah, and there's a big reason for that. It's not just the pill that's in the air and the water, but it's also soy. Soy is got genistein in it, and genistein is also a female mimicking hormone. And it doesn't matter if it's non-GMO soy or GMO soy, it's still got genistein in it. And I was shocked to find out that, for example, the only animals that we ingest most of the time that don't eat soy are cows. Cows cannot digest soy, but pigs, hogs, chicken, basic fish, if it's a fish farm fish, they're feeding it soy. Why? Because of cost. I was told by a guy who's a chicken farmer, he said, if you don't know that much about chickens, they eat a lot. I said, okay. I said, why do you feed them soy? He said, 0.5 cents a pound for chicken feed is a deciding factor on what they feed the chickens.
Right.
So, soy is everywhere. Endocrine disruptors are everywhere. 5 years earlier, I attended an international environmental conference at Harvard. A woman there, a toxicologist, said she showed pictures of hermaphroditic insects, hermaphroditic animals.
What's a hermaphroditic animal?
Hermaphroditic meaning male, female. They didn't have a sex. When you and I were growing up, I never heard the word trans. There were 5, and this was 1996. I was hearing, and you may have heard this too. It's a long time ago now. There were fish in the Potomac that were male that were laying eggs.
Right.
So yes, I was a little shocked by all this, but I also suspected there was something going on. And being a surfer and having, this close friend and another guy after that got melanoma in their early 20s and didn't have a history of it in their family, I said, well, there's got to be something we can do. So all that came together, and I filed my first patent application on a non-endocrine disrupting, cytoprotective, immuno-enhancing sunscreen. So that's a lot.
Wow.
Break it down. No female mimicking hormones, no toxic substances. And like you said, if the ingredients, you wouldn't put them in your mouth, don't put them on your skin. So the long answer to your question is I was suspecting that there was something going on, and I figured there must be a way to really make something better and different. Also, I had just come back from Australia, where all they talked about in those days was the ozone hole over Australia,
right,
which is causing all kinds of damage, UV light damage, right, and the pollution of the waters. And Australia, you would think, is a pristine place. It's not. It's not like New Zealand. And 80% of the people in Australia live on the coast, and they're overexposed, and they're getting ozone hole on top of that. So I said, well, okay. And when I was in Australia, I realized they were using different sunscreens than we do in the US. They were using mostly titanium dioxide, which is an inorganic active sunscreen. It's not an endocrine disruptor. It's not transparent. It's whitish. Yes. We don't like the whitish stuff. We like transparent stuff. So
the reason you put that stuff on, and you look like you're doing your Marcel Marceau,
right?
The white, the whole white clown.
Yeah,
thing.
Like Bozo the Clown, right?
Yeah, it's pretty intense, right?
Yeah. So basically, what we've done, and you'll appreciate this because what the lifeguards put on their nose is pure zinc oxide.
Correct.
And but of course, nobody wants to put that on their face or their body, and also you can't because it doesn't spread. So without going into a lot of detail yet, we can go in as much as you want. But basically what we've done is taken what the lifeguards put on their nose and made it into a lotion. And you would think that was easy to do, but it was actually a very difficult process. And there was a reason for doing it that way, because zinc oxide is even better than titanium dioxide in terms of absorbance of UV rays. So UV rays, there's UVA and there's UVB. It turns out that the FDA, in their infinite wisdom, yeah, I'm being a little sarcastic, the FDA says, well, you've got to worry about SPF. SPF. You know, I'm sure when you go out there and you're in the sun in Venice, you're worried about, you know, having something that's SPF 30 or above.
Well, you hear this on the news. Make sure that you've had SPF 30 or above today because of the UV indexes, blah, 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 or whatever.
Exactly. And so why, right? So what does SPF 30 mean? Well, it means that for you or for me, because we're Caucasian, probably, and we're pretty light-skinned, probably within about, let's just say, to make it easy, 10 minutes in exposure to the sun like you have in Venice today with no clouds, you know, high exposure. In 10 minutes, you're going to turn pink. Your skin's going to just start to get a little pink. Now, you're not going to get burnt. You're just going to turn pink. Well, the 30 times the 10 is sun protection factor 30 times 10 means supposedly that if you put an SPF 30 product on your body, you're going to have 300 minutes of protection from what? Not from UVA, but only from UVB. And what's the difference? Well, UVB is the short penetrating rays that cause your skin to burn. UVA will also cause some burning, but it's the deep penetrating rays that cause DNA damage, which leads to aging, wrinkling, and if your immune system isn't working well, skin cancer, right? So UVA is the real culprit. UVB is really what tells your body what. So if you're starting to burn and you're in the sun and you don't have anything on your body and you live like caveman or, you know, before sunscreen was ever invented, which by the way used to be called tanning lotion. Right. So, and of course it's a long story, but tanning your hide is not what you want to do. So bottom line is when you're starting to burn, your inclination is to get the heck out of the sun, at least get into the shade. Right. Or at least get out of the, you know, direct sunlight. Well, think about this. If you're putting an SPF product, SPF 30, let's say, and you're protecting yourself from UVB rays and you're not burning, then you're going to be exposed longer and longer and longer, which is okay, except what if it doesn't have any UVA protection? So that's what the whole, you know, full spectrum protection they talk about is about. But the FDA only requires, well, now the FDA in 2011 was their last monograph, and the one before that was 1978. Wow. So they've only had 2 new monographs since 1978. Okay. And those monographs are about SPF. They're not about UVA. They're not about endocrine disruptors. They're not about toxic substances. They're just really catering to the large pharma companies that are making SPF all the way up to 100 at one time or more. Now they've regulated, they say you can only have SPF 50. Well, it's interesting. Some of the companies were still touting as early as last summer SPF 100, which is against FDA requirements and the FDA rules. But, you know, I guess if you're, you know, name a company, if you're a big company, you don't have to play by those rules, I guess. I don't know.
Well, you know, that's we understand the influence. I believe it was identified by John Mackey in his book, Conscious Capitalism, what he called crony capitalism, where big players could influence political campaigns and get passes or regulations that support their industry and squeeze out competitors, which is not the original direction of capitalism. And so what people think is capitalism today, isn't it what it is in its essence, like, you know, wealth of nations kind of thing. So what we have is a distorted version of that that's not accurate, and these special interest groups and influences through government agencies which dictate to the population and oftentimes bring stuff to research or market that isn't current with what current research is indicating, because it goes through these long government bodies and then a new group gets elected and it gets pushed back, installed, and nothing gets done. And the consumer today has to take things by their own hands, because you can guess that any policy coming out of the government probably 10, 15, maybe 30 years behind the times. Would that be accurate?
Absolutely, 100%. And you bring up John Mackey, who was the CEO of Whole Foods. It's now owned by Amazon. So we know for sure, having dealt with Amazon, because we do sell products on Amazon, that they're a monopoly that's very difficult to deal with. And FDA uses Amazon basically to do some things that they need to do to eliminate competition out there. And regulate people. In a lot of cases, unfortunately, out of business. We've dealt with it ourselves. So, getting back to the whole SPF thing and exactly what you said, we developed something that literally is 20 or 30 years ahead of its time, and we patented the heck out of it because I do patent work for a living. Third Rock is a hobby that's trying to be a business. But so getting back to the SPF thing, so if you're overexposed, which is where the whole sun thing comes from. It's not, everybody says, well, what about vitamin D? I don't want to stop vitamin D synthesis in my body because I've got sunscreen on. And by the way, the FDA doesn't allow you to call it sunblock anymore. And the name of my company is Third Rock Sunblock, but we call it Third Rock Sunblock Sunscreen.
Right.
Okay. So it turns out that if you're overexposed to the sun, after 20 minutes, you've got all the vitamin D you want. If you've got pure daylight and you're out in the sun and you've got essentially shorts on and a t-shirt or nothing, you're going to get all the vitamin D you need in 20 minutes. Your body can only make that much.
Right.
So really wearing sunscreen is a big issue if you're either worried about aging and wrinkling. Women want to put it under their makeup, for example, and wear it all the time. When you're in the car, you're overexposed, especially in LA area where you're in the car and you wouldn't believe the magnification of the glass in your car and how that actually hurts your skin, and you get more UVA and UVB than you would if you were just outside.
Well, just think of how hot your car seat gets, for an example.
Exactly. So that's all from UV radiation, right? So again, the FDA sort of had it upside down. They say, well, we're gonna allow you to put products on your body, and they consider sunscreen a drug, by the way. It's OTC, over the counter requirements. So you have to make it in an OTC facility, which right away rules out about 80 to 90% of the manufacturing facilities in the United States or throughout the world. And so to meet those requirements, you have to have SPF testing, you have to have a microbial challenge, and you have to have something that proves that the product stays together, which is basically shelf life testing. So, and doing all that alone is thousands of dollars. And then just to have an FDA approved sunscreen, right? But the whole thing about UVB is overexposure to UVB means you're going to burn. Definitely means you're going to burn. Right. And I don't know about you, but I don't think I've ever put an SPF product on my body that gave me 300 minutes. 300 minutes is 5 hours of protection in the sun. And I'm estimating low because I'm saying in 10 minutes we turn pink. If it's 15 minutes, then you'd have 450 minutes of protection from the sun before you start to turn pink. Right. Well, if it never rubs off, you never go in the water and you never perspire, maybe that'll happen. But when I tell you the rest of the story, you say there's no way. So UVA, however, it has nothing really to do with UVA. So you might be getting protection from burning for several hours, but the UVA rays might act, not only might, but in most cases are going to cause damage to your skin. Right. And you get this false sense of protection that you're not burning, but the next morning you might wake up sore because what UVA does is it causes chain scission. It basically destroys the cells, the skin cells. And that's why, if you've ever had a real bad sunburn, you wake up the next morning, you go, I'm sore all over. That's from UVA. And that's overexposure to UVA. So you might not.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
That comes to mind too, because I would like to dive into this because I know there's probably a lot of people who might not live in Venice or not being they're in a northern climate, but they use tanning beds.
Yes.
So I'd like for you to kind of segue into that as well.
Yes, well, the leading dermatologist on the East Coast, and I think he's probably the best, not only because he's a friend and colleague, but he's got like 3 skin laser clinics, and he's got 3 offices, and his name is Dr. Bernstein. And he had a photobiology conference in 2005 at Temple University, where he only invited the top-notch folks in the skincare industry, L'Oreal Vice President of R&D, the guy, Curtis Cole, who used to be the director of all the sunscreen for Neutrogena. And we had a little, day and a half conference. I was one of the only non-medical people there. And so I had to watch what I said. But he talked about, everybody gave different talks. And one of the talks was about tanning your hide. And that had to do specifically with, the UV, the solar booths where you go in and you get your tanning thing done.
There's UVA, there's UVB, there's high pressure, there's like all that stuff. There's all these variants.
Yes.
Right?
Well, the bottom line is once your skin starts to tan, you've been overexposed to UV. And there's no question. And so the question is, what do you want to look like when you're in your 70s, 80s, or 90s? Do you want to look like this old, aged, wrinkled person, or do you want to look like your skin is still viable, right? Mm-hmm. Because your skin's your largest organ, and you want to take care of your skin. So overexposure to the skin, in the Scandinavian countries, they look down on us about having a tan. That's not considered health. In Asia either. It's not considered health. I worked for the Japanese for 10 years. The geisha girls, for example, they don't get tanned, right? They have a white skin. So white skin, porcelain skin is highly valued in Asia and in Scandinavia. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't get UV exposure to get vitamin D. And there are shortages of vitamin D in Asia and in Scandinavia. So, you have to strike that balance, right? You don't want to be overexposed, but you also don't want to not have sunlight every day.
So we call ourselves Bioptimizers. There's the maximum dosage, there's the minimum dosage, and there's the optimal dosage.
Absolutely.
You always want to strive for that.
Absolutely, 100%, right? It goes back to what our grandparents probably taught us, which is, too much of a good thing or too much of anything is not good, right? Yeah. You don't need $1 billion to be happy, and you don't need to be in direct sunlight for 200 hours to be healthy. So, right. So it's all those things. So anyway, this whole thing about SPF, UVA and UVB, what we do is we sort of break it down, and we have a brochure on it. I can show you the chart, but basically what happens is you want a product that you put on your skin that will absorb in the entire spectrum of UV light, meaning UVB, UVA, and UVC. It turns out UVB is about 280 to about 320 nanometers. That's the wavelength of the light. And then from about 320 to about 400 nanometers, that's where the UVA region is. And what you really want is you want something that absorbs and maybe reflects over that entire UVB, UVA range. And we
talk about UVC, because that's not something that you hear commonly. So what's UVC? Right.
So
what's
UVC
its relevance in the body or potentially?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I honestly am not an authority on it. But UVC, not that I'm an authority on any of this, but UVC are also long penetrating rays. And the spectrum for those is above 400 nanometers. And then, of course, you get into the IR range, you get into infrared range. And now, some of these tanning booths, for example, they'll say, well, we don't use UVB or UVA, we're doing IR. Well, at the end of the day, radiation is radiation is radiation. And how much damage it does to your skin depends on really just 2 things, exposure time and distance from the source. Now, the good news is we're 93 million miles away from the sun. Right. So we don't have to worry about the distance, right? But we do have to worry about the source. And artificial light, you can, and they do in some of these light booths, they will distinguish, they can pick the spectrum of light that the bulb is going to burn at. And that way you can adjust, the source. And of course, that's what these UV tanning light boosts
Yeah,
do.
you're seeing that now where people adjust the intensity and things like that.
Exactly.
The industry is starting to catch up to where the tech is, right?
Yep, exactly right. 100% correct. Yes. So, getting back to sunscreen, now the other problem was, on top of all this issue about endocrine disruptors, the endocrine disruptors were only for the substances that are what they call, believe it or not, organic sunscreens, active sunscreens. So there's an active and an inactive portion of a sunscreen, like there is for any cosmetic or any personal care product. There's something in it that might be active, like retinol, to help you be wrinkle-free, all those things, right? But it's usually the base that you have to worry about. And the base for sunscreen is oil and water. Every sunscreen on the planet, except ours, is oil-based and water-based. 70% water and roughly 10+% oils and waxes. And then the actives. So the actives can be these organic sunscreens, which are the female mimicking hormone, endocrine disrupting chemicals. They call them organic because they're carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. That's the only reason they're organic. Has nothing to do with organic food or organic drinks or organic beer or wine, or it has to do with the fact it's just chemistry, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So,
right on.
So those sunscreens.
Thank you for that distinction. I think that's really important. So that could be designated as organic.
Yes.
Even though they may be organically activating estrogenic pathways inside your body.
That is exactly correct.
Right.
Right. And
because estrogen technically is an organic compound.
Absolutely.
Men manufacture, women manufacture, and it varies from person to person.
Yes.
But we're living in this highly technologically advanced world where there's a disproportionate amount of these estrogen-like mimickers, which is generating these estrogenic pathways, which have major consequences on our health, our vitality, replication, testosterone, like everything.
Everything.
Okay.
So you're exactly right. And so organic is a marketing term, which the USDA now has USDA organic labels they put on stuff, right? Or you have to buy, basically. And of course, they even do it for personal care now. The bottom line is, organic sunscreens are only organic for that reason, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. It turns out that zinc oxide and titanium dioxide are the only two inorganic sunscreen actives allowed by the FDA.
Okay.
The only two.
When you say sunscreen actives, can you kind of say that when referring to zinc and titanium oxide?
Right. Well, actives means that it's active in giving you sun protection factor.
Okay.
So all the organic sunscreens, as well as the zinc and the titanium oxides, those are all considered active ingredients by the FDA. Remember, they consider this like a drug, right?
Yeah.
So that's what they're
That's interesting right there, just in its point.
It is, right? Yes. They're administering these drugs to your skin, which are actives. The endocrine disruptors are clear. They're transparent. So when you put it on your skin, you don't see it. So, that's why they have the spray that you can spray on, which we call, my family, well, me, and then my daughters finally caught on, I call it insecticide. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. You're spraying alcohol and endocrine disruptors onto your skin, and it's transparent, and it stops you from burning. So, so is that any better than the mineral oil that women and our girlfriends used when we were in college? I would say it's not better. It's worse. The mineral oil had an SPF value of about 4, and it would still allow you to burn, and it didn't have any UVA protection, but at least you weren't putting something on your skin that was literally a female mimicking hormone, which is being delivered directly to your bloodstream, which, by the way, there's another story on that. The Danes, they call them the crazy Danes, when they found out about this study that Margaret Schlumpf did, they took all the sunscreens off the shelf in Denmark. And so the EU said, wait a minute, you crazy Danes, you can't do that. So they put it all back on the shelves. However, they did a study to determine what happens to these endocrine disruptors when they're on your body. Turns out they wind up in your blood plasma, and your urine. Okay. So if you think you put something on your skin and it doesn't show up in your body, I got news for you. Your skin's your biggest organ. It'll wind up somewhere.
Absolutely.
Right? And people don't think about their skin.
You detoxify, and
yes,
plugging it up is not a good idea.
Not a good idea. So it's I characterize your skin as a sponge. It works both ways. It absorbs, and it also gets rid of, as you say, toxins, right? And you want to get rid of that. And of course, think about this. So your skin, your biggest organ, now you're putting this sunscreen on that's toxic, and you're not going to perspire, or things are not going to happen the way they're supposed to be. Because what does endocrine disruption mean? It disrupts your endocrine system, which is part of how you get rid of the toxins that are in your body. So in the presence of the sun, which is the biggest free radical generator on this planet, and free radicals are what causes aging and causes disease. You've got the sun coming on you. You got this gunk on you that's toxic, proven to be at least endocrine disruptors, right? And toxic substances that go together with the actives. And what's happening is your immune system's being depressed while you're being beaten down by these rays of the sun that are affecting your body. So I'm thinking to myself, no wonder we get skin cancer, and no wonder the skin cancers in the world are on the rise. They don't fall down. So what's wrong with that picture? Well, everybody knows they're supposed to use sunscreen. So if everybody's using sunscreen, you'd think that skin cancer would be going down. And instead, the rates are going up. If you live to be 65 in the United States, the chances of you getting some form of skin cancer is 50%.
I remember looking at this a long time ago, and I had made suggestions to people saying, look, if you look at the data in the sales of sunscreen lotion and the incident of skin cancer, geez, it looks like something like they're like they track perfectly together. I got another question now. What about information talking about the challenges of lighting that you might be exposed to? And I'm very sensitive to the types of lighting I use in the house, particularly the gas discharge lighting. I just can't be in a place that has it because it flashes at a different. Can you talk about that? And maybe it's how it disrupts the skin or it disrupts the body.
The Bioptimizer mission is to help more of the world fix their digestion at a core level. The truth is, your digestion is only as good as your enzyme levels. Imagine trying to build a house with a tree. It's impossible. You need to chop the tree down into small pieces. Similarly, in order for your food to be used by your body, it must be broken down into a bioavailable form. And that's what enzymes do, converting protein into amino acids, fats into specific fatty acids, and carbohydrates into usable energy units. We start out with an abundance of enzymes, and that's why kids can digest just about anything really quickly. The thing is cooking food kills enzymes, as they cannot survive at temperatures above 118 degrees. So years of this ends up depleting our bodies and leads to weak digestion. Taking digestive enzymes like masszymes, which has an incredibly high level of protease for digesting protein, as well as other critical enzymes like lipase, amylase, and others, is a total game changer. Suddenly, you strengthen your digestion, eliminate gas and bloating, boost metabolism, and multiply your energy. Most importantly, you fix your digestion at a core level. To get started with masszymes and to save 10% on your first order, go to masszymes.com. That's masszymes.com, and use the code MASS10, MASS10.
Well, in terms of disruption of the skin, again, any radiation that you're overexposed to, or any radiation coming from either man-made light or the sunlight that you're overexposed to, is eventually going to cause some skin damage, right? Because radiation is literally even if it's not light radiation, it could be radiation from atomic radiation. It could be radiation, electrical radiation, EMI, RFI radiation. But over time, overexposure will change the cellular structure of your skin. Now, as far as, light, like Dave Osprey's got these glasses that he uses for indoor lighting and stuff. Again, depending on, how your brain functions, depending on how you normally operate and think, you and I both know, and I'm in natural lighting here right now myself. would you rather have natural light or would you rather have artificial light? And the answer is, I think in almost all cases, you'd rather have natural light because that's what the human body was conditioned to, having artificial
we got
light.
billions of years of evolution and
Right.
biological organisms to adapt to that. And these are relatively new technologies with unknown consequences down the road.
100%. Yes.
I have these whole tirades I go on called the unintended consequences of technological innovation.
Yes. Unintended consequences of Thomas Edison.
Yes.
Right? Yes. I mean, a brilliant guy, wanted to make light available to everybody, Tesla too. But, the guys were geniuses. But the point is that that's all something that's very new to our bodies. And, whether it's skin cancer or other cancers, look at our food chain, look at our water systems. All of those things were intended, I think, initially as a good thing. I don't think anybody was evilly planning on destroying the human race. But by doing all the things we have that are the modern conveniences that we have and being able to do all these other things that our ancestors couldn't do, there's some, there's always the negative side. So getting back to your question about lighting indoors, I think everybody has a different immune system. Everybody has a different brain. Everybody has a different capability. They even did a study on twins and showed they don't even have identical immune systems, right? So the thing is, what you can tolerate and what I can tolerate and what your family and my family and friends can tolerate are all different things. And whether or not the light is going to affect your ability to think or your ability to, stay healthy, all those things are going to depend on really how your body receives it and whether or not your body says that's healthy or not. And so I think that's a very, I'm sure there's a lot of studies on like there is on EMI and RFI. I know a lot about that, electromagnetic interference, radio frequency interference, which we get from, being on Zoom, being on our cell phones, right? All that. There's no question those are all radiation emitting devices. And there's no question that the radiation that's being emitted, depending on how far away you are from the source and depending on the intensity and depending on the duration of the exposure, are all going to have influences on how you think, on how you breathe, on how you receive it. And, so I would say ideally, you want to be outside as much as you can. You want to be not overexposed, including sunlight, because, unless you're in Sahara Desert of Africa and you were born and raised there and there were generations of your family that were used to being, having daily exposure to UV light for sunlight, you need to be protected somehow, or you got to get out of the sun. And of course, if you surf or if you run or anything you do outside sport activity and you do it for more than 30 or 40 minutes, by definition, you're going to be overexposed. So the question is, how do you protect yourself from that? And I think sunscreen does work if it's the right sunscreen. And zinc oxide.
Let's get into that. Can you talk about your products in particular, why
Sure.
you developed them, and then what makes them superior to other products that people are available? I just got a generous gift from you. And it's so great. I really like the products and I actually sent some over to my mom because my mom is very sensitive to heat and light.
Yep.
And she slathers this garbage on her skin. And God bless her, I love her dearly. And I'm like, okay, here, you need to get these. And I just sent her some of your products over to her because I'm hoping, and I'm going to make her listen to this. So all my listeners, when I have a good podcast like this, I actually tag my mom and I say, Mom, you need to listen to this.
Gotta listen to this one.
This is for you, Mom. This is for you to listen. Listen to Guerry. He's going to share with you exactly what products he makes and why you need to use these instead of that other junk you're getting at the
Yes, exactly. So, unfortunately, I'm looking for my brochure here on my sunscreen, and it looks like I was stupid again, and I didn't bring my brochure. But I have a plot that shows the UV light versus absorption for everybody else's sunscreens and ours. And ours is this top green line, which covers the entire UV spectrum. Meaning, again, we've taken what the lifeguards put on their nose and we've made it into a lotion. So we've made two different products. One is this aromatherapeutic product, which is
Third Rock Sunblock.
Third Rock Sunblock Sunscreen, because the FDA requires it to be called sunscreen.
Right. So the company's called Third Rock Sunblock and then this is Third Rock Sunblock Sunscreen, right?
Yeah, actually we evolved. Third Rock Sunblock Incorporated, and we evolved to Third Rock Essentials because we don't make just sunscreen anymore.
Right, exactly. So we'll get into some of that again.
Yeah, okay. And so this is the
product to us, and it's full spectrum.
Yes, full spectrum. It says, and it really is. It really, and we make an unscented version too. So what's the difference? The aromatherapeutic has rosemary and frankincense.
I love those two.
And those
it smells great, by the way. I love the smell of it.
You do. So you're unlike most guys who want an unscented version. But why did we use rosemary and frankincense? Because believe it or not, we had it muscle tested with a chiropractor kinesiologist who's been the doctor since 1982. His brother Wally wrote a book that's almost 1,000 pages long, and our sunscreens actually featured in his book. And he has clients from all over the world.
What's your chiropractor's name?
His last name is Schmidt. SCHMITT.
Well, we're really big into using kinesiology. In fact, a friend of mine just down the road studied under Sheldon Deal, and then Dr. David Hawkins and his whole map of consciousness. And then, of course, my chiropractor, he introduced us, Dr. Stephen Reed, introduced me to this process. And it seems really far out. But then when he starts telling you what you ate for dinner 2 days ago through his testing, you're like, okay, but maybe there's something about this, right? Or, so it's a wonderful way to get to, with a high level practitioner,
absolutely,
you can actually determine what's effective for you. So you've got the rosemary and frankincense.
Well, the rosemary and the frankincense, just so you know, Dr. Wally Schmidt is the brother who everybody knows, internationally known. Dr. John Schmidt is my guy, and they live in Chapel Hill and Raleigh, North Carolina, which is where I used to live, and that's how we met. And so he muscle tested those two scents on over 100 people. And everybody tested positive. So if anybody doesn't know what muscle testing is, that's in your podcast, what happens is it's a neurophysiological response. There's a reason why your nose and your mouth are this close to your brain. And because your brain wants to know quickly if there's something out there that might kill you, right? And if you get something toxic, whether it be food, whether it be gas, whether it be liquid, and it's toxic, and your nose and your mouth find out about it, your brain is going to know instantaneously, essentially, that it's not good for you, and you're going to get away from it.
Yeah, Dr. David Hawkins talks about how he feels that this whole response mechanism is the foundation of nervous systems, because all single-cell organisms require an external source of food. And if you put any single organism by mercury, it will instantly recoil from it. And that is this food, or is this good supporting life or not supporting life, ultimately evolved into the nervous system and developed our brains over millions of years of evolution by just organisms looking for a source of energy. Is this going to kill me, or is this going to support me?
Right.
As a highly complex, multi-celled organism, we can take a certain amount of toxins. We're built to adapt to a certain amount of damage. But our body actually knows, and Dr. John Diamond wrote a book, The Body Doesn't Lie.
Yes, I know that book.
It's a great way to kind of get an introduction into the concept of this. And of course, it's expanded rapidly and used by holistic practitioners around the world. It's not woo-woo. It is a definable and an effective way to quickly discern what's good for you and what's not. So that's really fascinating. I didn't know that about frankincense and rosemary. That's beautiful.
Well, neither did I. And to bring this completely full cycle, Dr. Schmidt, John, also did muscle testing for every single one of the components that I put in the sunscreen. Initially, I was naive. I wrote a patent. I didn't know how to make sunscreen. I got the old school chemist to put stuff together. I said, no, you can't use this. You can't use this. They can't use this. And they gave up because they didn't know how to make the product. I took every one of the individual components from standard sunscreens and had him muscle tested. Then I went to his number one patient, first time patient he ever had, Dr. George Clark, who lives in Durham and is not associated with Duke, but figured out how to determine endocrine disrupting without using animals. they took my sunscreen and compared it to all the other sunscreens, and we published in the Journal of Toxicology in 2005 to prove that my sunscreen is the only non-endocrine disrupting sunscreen on the planet.
Wow, that's amazing. Did you hear that, folks? We're talking about the only sunscreen that doesn't interrupt your endocrine system. That's a real, as they say, and they say in marketing, that's a big USP. Like no one else is doing this, and you've been able to prove this is epic, and that's why we're highly suggesting you get access to this. Tell us more.
So we should preface that with the word proven, because we're the only ones who'd ever tested to determine if it's endocrine disrupting or not. The sunscreen formulation, because remember, sunscreen formulation has at least 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 components in it. So they all have to be non-endocrine disrupting, not just
like sodium what the heckinate.
You got it. Yes. So the preservatives, which is sodium what the heckinate, right? Or potassium what the heckinate, all of those can potentially be toxins and potentially be endocrine disruptors. So how did he determine endocrine disruption? You won't this is an amazing thing. So he figured out that luciferase, which is an enzyme that fireflies or lightning bugs, depending where you grew up, when they light up, they use luciferase. It's the luminescence enzyme. And he took that and made a bioassay out of it to determine whether something was endocrine disrupting or not, down to 10 to the minus 16th power.
So if it would actually start to glow, then if you got, is that what it was? How'd that work? If it was that.
Well, exactly. What happens is he measures the loss of light intensity.
Right.
He measures the loss of light intensity. And when something loses light at 10 to the minus 15th power, it's still an endocrine disruptor, or it's still toxic. What does that mean? It's killing cells. The cells are dying. So with my sunscreen, we were able to develop a product where the cells don't die, right? That's really important because you're trying to keep your skin cells healthy, but yet a lot of the sunscreens, 90% of them out there, you're putting it on your skin and you're killing skin cells, which means that you're regenerating new cells, which are going to be more susceptible to UV light than the old cells that are still healthy, right? Because, right? I mean, it's all this stuff going on, right? And there's many layers to it. So it turns out that all the emulsifiers, all the emollients, everything but the oil and water that goes into the sunscreen products, this being our number one aromatherapeutic one, we call it aromatherapeutic because the rosemary and frankincense is not perfume, right? It's a set of essential oils that literally, when you breathe it, it causes your immune system to strengthen, immuno-enhancing. Right. Which is what you want. You want body armor. You're out there in the sun. You need something to protect you. That's what we made. Now, the unscented version is identical, except it doesn't have the rosemary and the frankincense in it. So is it as effective? Probably not. But do people like it? We sell more of the unscented than we do of the aromatherapeutic. Right. But it is what it is, right? Because people want to smell coconut oil because that goes back to what your parents and grandparents used, which was tanning lotion. Right. And I'm in Florida right now where that's, you want to smell like you're on the beach. You want to have the beach smell, which everybody associates with coconut oil because of palm trees. But anyway, that's a long story. So getting back to our sunscreen, what did we really do? So there's a couple of things. We made it all food grade and edible ingredients because those are the only things I could find that were non-toxic and not endocrine disrupting. And so we use beeswax and olive oil and orange wax. And of course, it's not vegan because we use beeswax. So that's another story. But we are Leaping Bunny approved. So the vegans
darn them bees.
Yeah. Right.
Our survival of the whole species of every organism on the planet is only dependent on bees. So
I had the discussion with the vegans and I said, well, wait a minute, it's just a byproduct of the bee. They said, no, if you're a true vegan, you can't have beeswax.
Don't get me started on.
I know. We'll go off on a tangent, but so we are Leaping Bunny approved. That took us 18 months. Leaping Bunny approved means they really know that it's not toxic substances, and you have to go all the way back to the source. So our beeswax is high mountain desert beeswax. Why? Well, it's not synthetic beeswax. That's a big issue. Most people use synthetic beeswax. And it turns out the high mountain desert beeswax, the bees have a higher SPF value in their wax.
I was going to say, at the higher level, they'll probably have already adapted to the high mountain environments. Dr. Rollier, who wrote a book on solar treatment of exposing people to different frequencies, would take people up to different levels of the mountain to get different UV lights that would activate recovery mechanisms inside the body by timed exposure to certain frequencies of light. So he was really deep into the optimal dosage. And of course, bees figured that out probably millions and millions of years ago before humans.
Yes. And it's unbelievable. This one source of beeswax we have, you put it in your room. They sell it to us in blocks of 1 and 2 pounds. Wow. And you put it in your room, and your entire room smells like you're in a nursery with flowers.
Wow.
It's just the floral fragrancy of this stuff is unmatched.
Wow.
Unmatched. So that's in our product. In addition, we chelate the zinc oxide. So now that's a whole big discussion, right? So why do we do that? So it turns out that in addition to the fact that we use only zinc oxide, and I was the first person on the planet to use just zinc oxide for sunscreen and patented it. And then Burt's Bees hired me and fired me the same year that they sold out to Clorox.
Right.
Okay, which was in 2005. And they sold to Clorox for $987 million. Wow. Yeah. I'm sorry, 2007, just before the crisis, right? I started working with them in 2005, and by 2007, they said, we don't need you anymore. We're selling out to Clorox. But anyway, so it turns out that zinc oxide, what happens with zinc oxide is when you put it in water, it turns into something called zinc hydroxide, which is a salt. And as I said, all sunscreens on the planet, except ours, are 70% plus water. Why? Because water is free.
Right.
So when you put sunscreen, anybody else's sunscreen on your skin, you're putting 70% water on your skin. What happens when you put 70% water on your skin? What happens to the water?
It dehydrates off, right? Or washes off.
It just evaporates. Right.
You're really basically, the information they're going is at best is going to be 30% of what they say. And then you might have areas of total exposure because you didn't cover that area properly. Is that what you're saying? Is that what
that happens, and you get pinholes and you get evaporation. And so our product is made with 70% glycerin.
Right. And glycerin has some very unique properties as well in how it repartitions water inside the body. And stuff.
Yes. Yeah. So we have a little card in our package that says about how to put the product on.
Right.
And unfortunately, 95% of the people put this product on like they put all other sunscreens on. But this is like Brill Cream, because we're old enough to know. Remember Brill Cream? Brill Cream, a little dab will do you, right?
Yeah. A little dab will do you. That's so great. A little dab will do you, because it's such a common speak where I grew up. Well, just put a little dab will do you, right?
A little dab will do you.
People don't know that came from Brill Cream. And what an amazing marketing tag.
Everybody in the United States grew up with Brill Cream, right? That was old enough to know, right? And it was just one marketing slogan that everybody knew, and everybody used it. All men used it. I don't know about women. It was basically to make men have their hair look good, right? So I just put this much on, right? There's hardly any, right? And if I spread that, that's enough for my entire hand and wrist for the day. And it does go away.
It goes right in.
It leaves a little bit of a white sheen after you come out of the water, which means you're protected still.
It means it's still on.
It's still on. Yes.
Right.
Yes. And I've been surfing sometimes for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I'll come out and I still have that sheen on me, which is, not a white bozo look. It does take longer to go in. And if you put as much on as most women and men put on, if it's for regular sunscreen, you are going to start to look like Bozo the Clown, but it'll all soak in because it's glycerin based, right?
Right.
So glycerin is halfway between oil and water. Glycerin doesn't require an emulsifier to keep it together. Oil and water do. Right? So if you take oil and water and put a good emulsifier in, you'll keep it together. So think about salad dressing at the grocery store. You got oil and vinegar. They don't mix. Everybody knows that. How do they keep it together? They keep it together with an emulsifier.
Right.
The emulsifier is usually toxic, but when it's food grade edible emulsifier, hopefully it's not a toxic. And what happens is, I guarantee if you go to the shelf next time and you look at the salad dressings, the one that has the most sodium and potassium salts in them has separated completely. And you have
absolutely. And my mom used to make salad dressing, and before you put the salad dressing on, you got to shake it up because otherwise it's going to separate.
Yeah, exactly. And so it doesn't matter how good the emulsifier is if you got too much salt. Well, guess what? Zinc hydroxide is a salt too. And when you add zinc hydroxide to water, it turns into zinc hydroxide. Unless, and God only knows how I figured this out, unless the pH is either above 9.5 or below 3.
Fascinating that you say that, because I actually have an electrolysis water machine that I can crank up to 11.5 to and I wash my vegetables, because it'll emulsify the oil-based pesticides that are even on 25, 50% of organics, because USDA allows 50 different chemicals on organic food. Right. Plus, it might have been on a truck with a bunch of other things. Who knows? And it's frightening to see the goop coming off your quote unquote organic food.
Yes.
So, it's interesting how pH and emulsification work together. So it's cool that you've figured all that sort of stuff out. So you can mix these things if you can play with pH.
Right. And it turns out we chelate the zinc oxide. So it's no longer zinc oxide, really. It's chelated with L-arginine, which is an amino acid, which is vital for a lot of things that men do, including forming nitric oxide.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So L-arginine takes the pH up to above 9.5. Now, what happens is people say, wait a minute, 9.5 pH, that's going to be very caustic. Right. No, actually, it's not caustic at all. If you buy Drano, it's caustic, right?
Yes.
So that's sodium hydroxide. But zinc oxide that has a pH of 9.5 stays zinc oxide. It does not become zinc hydroxide in water. And what happens is, by keeping it zinc oxide, we keep the UVA, UVB spectrum completely intact, so that it absorbs over the entire spectrum, all the way, just like the stuff the lifeguards put on their nose, that's pure zinc oxide. So to make a lotion that is identical to what the lifeguards put on their nose, if you can't chelate the zinc oxide and keep the pH above a certain number, you're not going to keep it as zinc oxide. It's going to be zinc hydroxide. And why is that important? Not only do you not get the same UV absorption anymore, but also what happens is it causes your emulsion, which is what the sunscreens are. They're an emulsion. It causes the emulsion to fall apart over time. And the FDA requires that you do accelerated testing to determine shelf life. Well, it turns out with our product, when you heat it to 40 degrees C in an oven, which is the test, for 2 weeks, you get 1 shelf life year. And with our product, not only does it not fall apart, it gets better, because the glycerin gets heated up and mixes even better.
Right. Oh, that's beautiful. See, now that's the beauty of really understanding chemistry from an internal operational perspective, as opposed to some external regulatory components that may have good intentions or not, or other influences. So I want to be mindful of everyone's time. This is so great. Where do people get these products? Like, I think that anybody that's listened to this podcast right now, they're like, wait, just get me the products. Summer's coming. I got to take care of my kids. How do I use this? Where do I get this? How do I get access to you? Ship worldwide. Can I get this product now?
Yes.
Tell us all about it. Where do you get? Where can we order?
So you definitely can get it. You definitely can get it. It's the name of the company online is Third Rock Essentials. So 3RD, the number 3, Third Rock thirdrockessentials.com. And we make a lot of other products too that we haven't talked about yet. But thirdrockessentials.com, our website. Unfortunately, we have to sell on Amazon as well. So you can get it on Amazon and you can get it on our website. It's in a few doctors' offices. It's in a few stores around the country. We do ship overseas. In fact, we have a big following in Australia where they're overexposed because of ozone, and they all live on the coast. And they're a very outdoorsy people, the Australians. So yeah, you can get it, and we charge $24.95 for 3.5 ounce, 3.4 ounce unit, which is in this tottle in the box. And if you open up the box, you get our story and you get directions for applying it. You get the story as to why we made this in the first place, and you'll understand some of the science. And if you want a lot of information, our website's pretty educational.
And by the way, folks, if you go to bioptimizers.com/thirdrockessentials and you put in bio20, you're going to get 20% off. That's very generous of you to do that. And here's something I want for our listeners to do. We always encourage for you to buy directly from the manufacturer if possible. We're really big into supporting individuals like Guerry, who is providing great products that are often subjected to unfair marketing squeeze plays, I should say, or don't have the economic resources to kind of go through the algorithms that many of the big sun chemical companies, I would call them sun chemical companies.
Right.
And so education is power, but always reward this. Get the information, go on there, check out his Instagram. They're at Instagram, Third Rock Essentials. If you're onto that, they're also on twitter.com, Third Rock Sunblock. These are really important things for you and your family to share. We all want to protect ourselves from the sun. And what really sucks is that so many well-intentioned people are spending all this money and giving away their health, their vitality, not just themselves, but their grandparents, their children, because they don't know that what they're buying is actually counterproductive to what they're trying to get. And you've changed the game with this, Guerry. This is amazing. Any final words before we wrap this up? We're going to get you back because there's some other things I want to talk about. We got into early, but we got to run up the show. So can you, any components that you want to add to our listeners?
I would just say, as far as sun protection is concerned, be wary of what you buy. There are other good products out there, but you're not going to find anything quite like ours. And it's, again, anything you find on Third Rock Essentials, we say, if you wouldn't put it in your mouth, why would you put it on your skin? Why on earth would you put it on your skin? So read the labels, understand the ingredients, right? Figure out whether or not that stuff that's in there is something that you really would want to swallow or have your kids swallow. And I think we had talked about earlier the Danish study about the stuff winding up in the urine and the blood plasma. Well, the conclusion of that study was it might not be that bad for adults, but we think it might possibly be an issue for infants and small children whose immune systems aren't fully complete yet. And I'm like,
not to mention the unborn.
Yes, exactly.
Right. The unborn fetuses, embryos, these type of things, which might be exposed to 10,000 to 100,000 times the amount of estrogenic chemicals than normal, which interrupt and their development. So check out The Disappearing Male. It's a great documentary. But more importantly, I would like you to go to bioptimizers.com/thirdrockessentials. Even if you just go to his Facebook page, but we're going to save you 20% with the Bio20 link. That's awesome.
Yep.
Just for listening, we don't take any money for it or anything else like that. We just want to expose this information to our crowd because your health is important to us at Bioptimizers. We don't make sunblock, we don't make sunscreen, we don't do those things, but we do bring you the information that will transform your life and make you a little bit healthier and let you live a little bit longer and a little bit stronger. Guerry, thank you so much for joining us today. It
was a pleasure. Pleasure to be here.
I learned so much, and you're so thorough, and you understand this on such a deep level, and you made a great product. I can't wait to get you back. We're going to talk about some silver next podcast, and some of the confusion, and of course, some of the suppression of the benefits of silver. Both you and I use silver quite regularly as something that we use to support our immune systems in the world that we live in.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, if your folks go online, they'll see we have 30 other products. So the sunscreen is where we started, but we've expanded tremendously. And so, yeah, I look forward to the next discussion for sure.
And there you have it. Bioptimizer.com/Third Rock Essentials with Bio20 save 20%. Thank you so much for joining us today, everyone, on the Awesome Health Show. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you go and check out Gary's company. Buy yourself that sunscreen. Get it, put it on your family, use it. You'll see the difference. You'll feel the difference, and you'll know that you're doing something that's good for you and good for the planet, and of course, good for your life. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you on the next episode. I'm Wade T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers. Have an awesome day. Thank you.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip. Turn cultured foods into superfoods. Raw fermented foods like sauerkraut and low sugar live yogurt can be good for you, but rarely have enough of the right probiotic strains for therapeutic benefit. So here's a way that you can turn them into superfoods. What I do is I get some raw sauerkraut or a healthy yogurt. Ideally, it's grass-fed or coconut-based, and you can empty 3 caps of P3OM into a container and mix it up thoroughly. Leave it at room temperature for a couple of hours before putting it back into the fridge. And what's going to happen is these probiotic levels will be multiplied. In fact, it doubles every 20 minutes. And then what you're going to get is you're going to have a food with strong proteolytic activity. To learn more about P3OM and why its patented strains make it the strongest probiotic available, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.